It's been a popular topic here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Diablo 4. You guys remember that game?
Let's talk about the prospective future
Heard the
of
Pee-wee
video
drama? No, I
games
haven't.
where price hikes may very well be in the not-so-distant future. So games have already gone from $60 to $70, and if I recall, this first began happening sort of mid-2020 when Take-Two, in the form of NBA 2K21, decided to be what I believe the first AAA game to start charging $70 instead of $60. And once other publishers realized that we're ready to make that the new normal because NBA 2K21 still ended up selling well after the price hike, this began the trend of other publishers one by one going, all of our games from now on will be $70, or certain select games that we deem to be, you know, high budget enough and AAA enough will be $70. Even Nintendo with Tears of the Kingdom, they decided to make that game $70.
$70. That's more than $2 per frame. It's outrageous. So, games have been $60 since Xbox 360. Because I remember buying Doom 3 for $60. And I think Halo 3 was also $60. And then I remember it was really weird because, like, in the Genesis era and at the beginning of the Nintendo 64 era, games were like, some games were like $30 and other games were like $70. Like Turok and Super Metroid and Super Mario RPG would be like $60 in like 1995. And then you'd have other games like The Lion King, for example, that was like $35 or $40. It was like very, very like, oh, it depends, right? And then GameCube, like the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era, like original, like big black box Xbox, they were all like $50. Like that was pretty much it. Like every game was $50 across the board. Some GameCube games were cheaper, but we've been at $60 since the, what do you call it? 360. Yeah.
And so where do we go from here? Is that going to be the standard for a while? Well, I think publishers at the very least contemplating the move to raise that ceiling again to $80, maybe up to $100 if recent activity and surveys are anything to go by. So right here we have a report detailing how Blizzard has been sending out surveys asking if players would be fine spending $100 on not even...
They are completely fine spending $100. Blizzard, you know, give in to sin, okay? You know that they'll do it. Just charge it. Just do it. Just do it, Blizzard. I want to see it. I need you to do this because I need to have YouTube content. I need the YouTube content. I need you to, like, it's the best thing for me and somebody like Yong is for the game to be $100. There'll be like 5 videos about that.
Full-size AAA game, but on a DLC, specifically a Diablo 4 DLC. This was apparently spotted by YouTuber Bellular News, who saw this survey and reported on it. The survey presented 4 game...
Okay. Let's get one thing straight. Is that I was the first person who farmed this. Bellular also farmed it, and then I watched his video and I farmed it a second time. And now I'm watching Yong watch Bellular's video farming it a third time.
Editions labeled A to D with price points at $50, $70, $80, and $100. Now, this is a survey. It doesn't necessarily mean this is a defined future, but the fact that the option is there means that there is, at the very least, some semblance of consideration for that price point or some kind of contemplation for the normalization of game prices being even above $70 for the base game, not even the higher editions. And if it was just Blizzard alone, I would just chalk this up to Blizzard being Blizzard or Activision being Activision. But other companies have also been trying to like poke the bear on that front. Sony and PlayStation, for example, you may recall that recently they experienced an unfortunate hack.
Would you pay $80 for a brand new God of War game that's the same level of quality as Ragnarok? I think people would. I think that an $80 AAA game is I think people would pay up to $100. I do. I think people will pay $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6. I think they'd pay $100 for whatever Baldur's Gate 4 is going to be. Assuming it's the same level of quality as Baldur's Gate 3. I think they'd pay $100 for Elden Ring 2. I think they'd pay $100 for a lot of these games. Now, I understand people say no, but are you saying no because you wouldn't buy it? Or are you saying no because you don't think people would buy it? Or are you saying no because you don't want companies to think that you would say yes? Because I think that really people would spend a lot more money on games. The third, yeah, a lot of people are saying no because they don't want companies to do it. But why would a company listen to people that are just telling them not to do something?
That has led to Insomniac information, details, game files, and whatnot making its way to the internet. This was a nefarious hack, straight up just a crime from a hacker who engaged in ransomware. And when Insomniac and Sony and PlayStation refused to pay the ransom, that stuff was leaked, and we saw, leaks for a build even for Wolverine alongside, the game files for Spider-Man 2, and we even saw like the schedule for upcoming releases like Ratchet and Clank and X-Men and stuff like that. So that was an unfortunate situation. But alongside that came...
Well, also like the Wolverine game got pretty much completely leaked. Which is like, that's not really... I mean, I'm not a fan of leaks. I'm going to be real. Like, I'm not a fan. Like, I wish we didn't have leaks. Now, am I going to go and be like, oh, these people are so fucking horrible? Like, look, it's between the publisher and them and the law. They're going to get arrested, and that's it, right? It's not my problem. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be nice if we just got to see what people had in store for us whenever it comes out.
A leak surrounding future plans to increase game prices. Among the things that PlayStation is thinking about is potentially planning to increase game prices from $70 to $80 to $100 in 2027. Now, keep in mind that just because those conversations are happening behind the scenes doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what's going to end up happening. But the thought process of it is still there.
Well, it will happen. In our lifetime, hopefully at least, right? Games will be $100. Because we have like fractional reserve banking, we have constant inflation, and eventually they will be $100. Whether that's in 5 years or 25 years, we will be paying $100 for video games at some period in time.
Something that is being considered, and 2027.
And at a certain point, if things keep, if Biden remains the president for the next 40 years, we can be telling our kids, so I remember whenever games was only $100 and you only had to buy microtransactions, and now they want you to give DNA samples. What? This isn't my Xbox I grew up with. Well, back in my day, Baldur's Gate 3 never asked me for a DNA sample.
Is not that far away.
And the kids would be like, it's fine, Grandpa.
Away. Now, by
this is normal.
That would be roughly around the
What are you worried
end
about?
Of this generation of consoles. Usually console generations tend to be 5 to 7 years. So that'd be sort of towards the end of PS5's lifespan. So maybe the plan is with the next generation of consoles, with PlayStation 6 and whatever the next Xbox might be, the goal might be to standardize an $80 to $100 price point for games. It seems as though that is in the talks, and it's not just one company. It's multiple companies who are either sending out surveys or discussing such plans behind the scenes. And then there are publishers who haven't directly said that they plan to increase...
I don't know why that shit's so funny to me.
...game prices, but have put opinions out there that game prices are too low and that the value is too good almost. So, for example, here we have Strauss Zelnick, CEO of Take-Two, the
Combat
company
ready, brother.
behind, Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, under the umbrella of Take-Two is Rockstar Games, as well as 2K. When speaking to investors back in November of 2023, here's a quote that was transcribed by news outlet Rock Paper Shotgun. Our frontline prices are still very, very low because we offer many hours of engagement. The value of the engagement is very high, so I think the industry as a whole offers a terrific price-to-value opportunity for consumers. There's a great deal of value offered.
What are we talking about? This is what we're at. So what you have in here is that this line is inflation. And then this line is the cost of games. You see this? So inflation is going up steadily every single year, but the cost of games doesn't go up every year in order to accommodate that. Now, what started happening right about here? This is the part that nobody likes. You ready? Here we go. These are microtransactions. Because microtransactions are used to bridge the gap between the price that people will not pay for the cost of games. Because the cost of games goes up every year. For a lot of games, for like these big AAA games. And it also begs the question, by the way, is this still a viable business model? Like, is it a viable business model to make these massive, like, AAA big games? So far, the answer is yes, but will the market change? We'll see what happens. So the microtransactions, and this was at about, like, I don't know, this is about, like, I'd say 2008, right? So after that, they started adding in these microtransactions, and now that's why they're being used. They're being used to offset the difference of the increased cost. Now, also, like, at the end of the day, the customer is not obligated to give a fuck about a business model for a company. But at the same time, a company needs to make money. And you can't expect a company to operate on a loss. So you have the microtransactions that exist to bridge that gap because customers are not willing to purchase games for the same price that they would be if it was accounting for inflation. More sales, no physical costs. Oh, you're right about that. But now they have live servers too, and so there's server upkeep as well. So while the costs have gone down for maybe making discs, the costs have gone up for server space and server storage. And so, yeah, I think there were always servers, though. Nothing new. No, there wasn't. There weren't servers like back in 2003. Not really. Let's be honest. It's nothing. Yeah. And again, guys, this is just what happens. In 2003, there was. Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. And question marks. Yeah, there was. Oh, of course there were some. You're right. But are we really what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing? Are we pretending? Are we pretending like live service games were as prevalent and popular and massive in 2003 as they are now? What are we doing here? Who are we talking? Who are you trying to convince? You're not going to hoodwink me with this. Everybody knows this is true. The companies expect to grow exponentially. That's how you attract investors. This isn't about making games. It's about making games that people buy, which brings investors. People have no idea what you're talking about if you think cost for servers and turn bandwidth hasn't gone through the roof. Well, of course it has. And also, I mean, like, you have to keep in mind, like, wages are higher now. Like, not every company is Blizzard. There are some game developers that actually get paid a livable wage. And also, the price of owning property has gone up. A lot of things have gone up. Now, you're right that there have been some things that have been a reduction in cost. For example, distribution and production of discs. Not really? Really? Okay, well, go buy a house in LA then. I heard there's still $40,000. So you're right that it's not just like a universal increase in cost, but I don't think that games are cheaper to make now than they were. The problem is 60%. 60 would go 60 to 100 will be a lot more than inflation. Don't forget, gaming's an ever-growing industry. It's the entertainment that makes most of the money, more and more buying games, so you keep buying them the same price for years and make a lot of profit. It's not my problem as a gamer, though. It's not your problem as a gamer at all. But I also think that it is reasonable. You have to also, like, will people pay this price? Because I think that the truth is that everybody usually decides what they're going to spend their money on by making a value judgment of what other things in the economy are worth for that same type of money. So, for example, somebody is going to compare buying Grand Theft Auto 6 to going to a movie, or they're going to compare buying Grand Theft Auto 6 to going to a club, like, or doing anything, right? Like going out anywhere. And as the price of everything else in the world increases, the perspective price in the mind of a consumer also increases. So things that were, on the dollar menu in the past are now on the value menu. So if a company says we're selling a hamburger for $3, well, that's reasonable for people now because the perspective has shifted. Like that anchor has shifted. And so even if video games don't go up in price necessarily, people will be more accepting of them going up in price every single year because people judge video games based off of an entertainment value proposition, and they judge that entertainment value proposition versus every other type of entertainment that's out there. And the truth is that even at $100, video games are a much higher value of entertainment than almost every other type of entertainment. Like you talk about watching a movie, watching a pay-per-view show of UFC, going out to a club. How many hours are you spending doing that? It depends. So I think that really you can expect to pay $100 for games quite soon. Either way, piracy will come back. What makes you think that it ever left? Piracy never left. People still pirate games now. Rare Asmongold, I'll take. What about what I'm saying isn't true? I'm not, guys, I'm explaining how the economy, this is my take on how I think the economy works. This isn't my opinion. Is inflation going up every year? Yes. Is the price of making a video game going up every year? Yes. Do people judge entertainment based off of its perspective value proposition? Yes. Like, why are you getting mad at me? I'm just saying I think this is the way people judge things. Like, I don't want microtransactions. I don't want expensive games. Nobody does. But I'm saying this is how it happens. The industry will crash in the same way that it did in 1983. It'll rise it again in the same way, too. I don't know. I think gaming is becoming bigger every year. The issue with microtransactions are often set up to exploit gambling weaknesses in the brain. That's a separate problem. Companies make more money on microtransactions than if they were to just increase the game price and no microtransactions. It's hard really to say, but I think that you're probably right, but it also depends on the game. I think that games that utilize gambling mechanics, you're probably right in, and games that don't, you're probably not right in. But I think that there's definitely a scale, and I don't have enough data to really say that you're wrong completely. 1983, they made more cartridges for games than they had sold systems to play on. That can't happen with this digital distribution. Yeah, I mean, I know there's people that are unhappy about what I'm saying. You can get mad about what I'm saying. You can be like, man, I really wish it wasn't like this. I wish it wasn't like this, but you're not really, I think that a lot of people are arguing against the reality of it. I'm not really wrong about this. I don't think that I'm wrong. And also, look, if I'm wrong, then let's clip this, save this video, put it on a notepad document, and say open in the year 2526 or 2527, and let's see what happens. Because I think that I think I'll be right. I think this is what's going to happen. And if you look at the way the market has changed over the years, I think that I'm making a good point here. They're considering the fact that all the new consoles are going to digital-only copies, so the cost of production will be removed to counteract inflation. I don't think that the cost of that is very high. And yeah, you're right. There's a component to that too. It's not every single thing is becoming more expensive. There are things that become less expensive. For example, physical distribution. That's less expensive now than it was. But that's one piece of the pie. And there's a whole pie, not just that one piece. I acknowledge that your piece is there, but there are also a lot of other pieces that people refuse to acknowledge.
And look, it's our strategy here to deliver much more value than what we charge consumers. There have been precious few price increases in the business. The price increase, for example, the $70 for certain frontline products was the first price increase in many years after many generations. So again, I think we offer a terrific value to consumers. And while Strauss Zelnick tries to present this in the form of, wow, doesn't gaming just have great value? For me, there is sort of...
Well, gaming does and it doesn't, right? Because it's like if you were to judge every game on Elden Ring or Cyberpunk or, you know, like Super Mario World or God of War, the answer is yes. But if you were to judge every game like Fallout 76 or, I don't know, like, I'm trying to look at the figurines that are from bad games over here. I can't see any more of them. But like, yeah, Gollum, right? And so like, again, the customer has to make an informed choice. And I think that really nowadays the customer has the most tools to make an informed and educated decision on what they're spending their money on. And I think that's the best thing that you can hope for.
An underlying meaning where when you read between the lines, it's him saying that games are too cheap. And on some level, he would likely like to see games increase in price point beyond $70. And do keep in mind that Take-Two was among the first, if not the first.
Well, guys, again, we live in a fractional reserve banking economy that has infinite interest. Like, interest creates inflation. Games one day will be $80. This is just a fact of life. Like, it's like entropy. It's just happening. That's it. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
On a large AAA scale to begin selling games at $70, which created this domino effect where other companies decided to join in once they saw that one publisher got away with it. And I think the scary part is that if Take-Two really wanted to sell certain games, like, say, Grand Theft Auto 6 at $80 to $100 even, they could probably get away with it because it's freaking Grand Theft Auto. In fact, there's already online activity showing that certain people are like, I'm actually fine with GTA 6 costing $100.
Yeah, and also you're going to have a lot of people that think that. And the reality is that the more games become mainstream, the more people will be okay with larger costs. Because video games back in like the year 2001, okay? Most people that were playing video games were young white guys without a lot of money. That's just how it is. And now games are massively more multicultural. There are tons more demographics playing games. I've heard girls play video games now, which is crazy, right? And you also have older people playing video games, and you have normies playing video games. And what ends up happening is that for those people, remember what I was telling before about how like they're going to do a cost-benefit analysis versus other types of entertainment they consume? These are people who go to the club, and they spend $171 at the club because they were only there for 2 hours. And for them, they're going to play Grand Theft Auto for 2 years, off and on. So guess what happens? To them, they say, okay, well, this is worth it to me.
Some folks agreeing with it. There's also plenty of disagreement. I mean, that is a huge price hike, $70 to $100.
Somebody says defending corporations for no benefit. I'm not defending corporations. I'm talking about what I think is going to happen. It only matters what is and what will be. And the closer that you can come to understanding and predicting what that is and coming to terms with it, I think the healthier that you will be mentally. We're not talking like take your emotions out of this. Live in reality. Stop living in the world that you want to live in. You're not in that world. You never will be. Look at what's happening, not what you want to happen. Just accept the greed or don't. Don't buy the games. I have no problem with someone saying, I'm not going to buy the games. That's fine. But what I'm not okay with is somebody saying that no one will buy the games. or that this is unfair, or this won't work. Because I don't think that you have any foundation to say that. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not about, like, it's again, people are making this argument. They're talking about what they want to happen. They're emotional about it. Yeah, stop being emotional about it. Stop thinking about how you feel about the topic and look at it objectively.
$30 extra for a game. And look, GTA 6 technologically is going to be on a whole new level. Its budget, I think it's rumored to be around $1 billion to $2 billion. It is a super high budget game, but even if sold at $70, it can make its money back and then some, because this game is going to sell insanely well. But beyond that, there is going to be the GTA Online offering, which is going to be, you know, near infinitely monetizable for many years to come.
True.
If GTA 5's online mode is anything to go by.
Very true.
So this is a company that doesn't really need to charge $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6, but could do it and could likely get away with it. I don't think that's actually what's going to happen. There are rumors that this could be something Take-Two would or might do.
I mean, I think that people need to come to terms with the reality that customers get to decide how much something is worth. Do you think clubs, like, how many times, when was the last time you guys went to a club? How much was one shot? It was $4 for me. That's one shot of alcohol. That is nuts. And, like, I haven't been to a club in, like, I went to one with, like, an ex-girlfriend, like 4 or 5 years ago. But, like, besides that, I hadn't been to one for, like, over 10 years. And it was $4 then. Is he? Yeah, she made me... I fucking hate it. Oh, God, bro. Like, that... Oh, that was... might be a coming surprise, but that was one of the nights that we got in a really big argument, and then we broke up that night, and then we got back together the day after. Yeah, I mean, that only happened 500 times. So, you know... So again, that's why I never showed XQC, right? I was like, fuck, I know what that's like. But yeah, I remember that very clearly. And so, yeah, I think that that's really... My point is that people, like, why is that club popular? Because people like going to it. If people thought that the price was too high, then the club would go out of business, right? But it doesn't. Because people accept the price.
But I personally think it is going to sell at $70. But the thought of, like, they could probably do $100.
They definitely could. Easily.
If they were to do that, other corporations and other publishers might be like, ooh, well, they pulled it off. Maybe we should try it too. Contemplating
somebody says rich people accept the price. I really think that you underestimate the financial literacy of most people. I have friends that spend $1,000 on a weekend, and guys, they ain't streamers. They just spend money. Oh, God, bro, they spend money like a motherfucker, man. Like, what are they doing? Yeah, people play gacha games. Yeah, what are you doing? Like, what is this? But are they rich? No. No, they are not rich. Oh my God, they're not. No, they will spend $1,000 at a club, and then we'll go out to get dinner. And they're like, yo, can you get me? I'm like, yeah, for sure, right? They're like, yeah, because, like, you know, I spent $1,000 on 6 last night. Like, oh, God. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's fine.
Standardization of games that cost more than $70, and that being the base price, and that change happening so quickly after the price increase from $60 to $70. I don't know, man. I'm not about that. Even Capcom has come out and said back in September of 2023 that game prices are too low. This is something that Capcom president Haruhiro Sugimoto said during Tokyo Game Show, stating that game prices are too low. Development costs are about 100 times higher than during the Famicom era, but software prices have not gone up that much. There's also a need to raise wages, considering the fact that wages are rising in the industry as a whole. I think raising unit prices is a healthy option for businesses, just because there's
and also keep in mind that AI will help them bridge the gap. Because if consumers are unwilling to spend money on that level, then AI will bridge the gap. because the AI will create the product at a faster rate than the employees will.
Doesn't mean you won't go to the movie theater or go to your favorite artist concert. High quality games will continue to sell. Now look, inflation is a thing. It is inevitable that as the years go by, as long as inflation continues to exist, game prices will eventually keep going up in price point at a base level.
They will.
But in terms of the justification behind that, I think it really does depend on a game-to-game basis. If we're talking about campaign-driven, story-driven, single-player games, or just any kind of interactive experience that doesn't rely on monetization tactics and schemes, that is high budget enough to justify that price increase, and they deliver on something truly high quality that isn't compromised by shady monetization tactics, and, you know, it does offer enough content where the value is there, even with the increased price point, then people are willing to overlook that stuff. But when
people are willing to buy a game for sure. People spend $1,000 on Genshin Impact. It's not about the money. It's just not. It's never about the money. It's nothing to do with the money. Like, if the game is $100, people would buy it if it was a good game. Like, that's it. Nobody gives a fuck. It's about the value. And like, that's what these publishers don't understand, is that how do you make somebody give you $100? How do you do it? You do something that's worth $100 for them. That's how you do it. Is you make a person think that you've created $100 of value. Can video games do that? Absolutely.
About games like NBA 2K, which in many ways kickstarted the move from $60 to $70
of course
AAA games. That's a game that is very much a live service, rife with monetization elements, where it's a lot harder to justify that price increase, because in a way the price did increase for that game even before games went from $60 to $70, because of all the different editions that they sell that are at higher price points, and that lock certain things and elements and content and currency behind those higher editions. And then beyond that, there are the microtransactions. And
there's like 50 different ways that they're monetized. Yeah, it's tremendous. And somebody actually brought up a really good point, and I think this is an argument against what I'm saying. And I want to address their point, because I think that I think this actually comes around to make a good point. Is that why haven't movies done that? He's saying, like, why haven't movies done this, like, increased in value? They've tried. Do you remember back in the 2000s who watched Spy Kids in 3D back in the day? You know, they tried to charge money for this too, right? Or charge more money for this. So they tried to do 3D, right? And then later on, look at The Hobbit. The Hobbit was one of the first movies that came out that was using, was it 48 FPS or did they just do 60? I forgot which one. But they tried to increase the perspective value as 48. Yeah, I thought so. Because most film is done between 21 and 24 FPS. I didn't know that. That sounded crazy to me whenever I heard it, and it's still hard to even wrap my mind around it. But how many of you guys saw the really viral clip of the duel between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi against Darth Maul in 60 FPS? And everybody was talking about how it was bad. Everybody hated it, right? It looked like shit, right? So the problem and the reason why movies failed at that is because movies tried to increase the value offering by increasing the amount of frames, right? Oh, this is a higher quality thing. It has higher frames. Or, oh, this is Blu-ray. It has, like a higher resolution. But consumers and moviegoers did not see the value in that. They did not perceive they did not perceive value there. And so again, how do you get somebody to give you $100? You create $100 of value. Did the movies do that? No. That's the reason. Because movies tried to do what video games succeeded at. Where 9 messages? Didn't the Hobbit trilogy did that? Yeah. I think many people react negatively to this because many games are released unpolished. Yeah, that's true.
boxes that if you don't engage with them, you're going to have a much harder time being competitive, especially
Yeah.
in multiplayer. And there are plenty of games that are like that who are saying, boo-hoo, games are so expensive to make now, but then will engage in tactics that essentially take content, strip content from a game, or compromise the gameplay loop for the sake of manipulating players into having to spend money to have a more ideal experience. And so in that way, prices...
Just like, I mean, just think about how great it is to farm something in Elden Ring or Monster Hunter, and then compare that bullshit to farming something in World of Warcraft or in Lost Ark even.
Have gone up. Games have become significantly more expensive to engage at an ideal level. And it's not as if publishers are going to increase the base price of games to $80 to $100 and then pull back on the monetization now that they're able to sell games at a higher price point. No, they're going to just, they want their cake and eat it too. They want to increase their games to $80 and $100 and also continue to employ monetization elements to generate the maximum amount of profit.
And this is what happens. And the problem really is that because gaming is so big now, there's no collective bargaining power that gamers have. Like, you have smaller groups, like, for example, Magic the Gathering is able to pull this off sometimes, and I think Warhammer recently did as well. And I think the most famous one in gaming is, again, Battlefront, is that there are examples of, like, basically the smaller a community is, the more resistant they are to price increases, to different things that are consumer unfriendly. But the larger a market is, the smaller, comparatively, the hyper-engaged audience of people who really care about the product is. You see what I'm saying? So, like for example, the hyper-nerds that really care about this are maybe 10% in gaming, but in Warhammer, they're 50%. So it matters more.
Putting out the excuse that games are too expensive to make, and games prices haven't gone up in so long, when they technically have, when you consider all the different monetization tactics that do make games more expensive if you want to have sort of the maximum amount of fun with those games.
Well, to be fair, those games, the most expensive games are the free-to-play ones. If you want to play an expensive game, play one that's free.
Experience the maximum amount of content. So yeah, in those scenarios where games have such aggressive monetization elements, people are going to be a lot less lenient about seeing those price increases, even with inflation, because games have experienced price inflation through other forms beyond the base price point. So I think that's where the line is drawn. That's where the delineation is at in terms of games where maybe people can overlook price increases versus games that already trying to milk your wallet. It should also be highlighted that game prices can vary even on a AAA scale. For example, recently, Microsoft and Xbox announced that Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 will cost just $50 instead of $60 or $70. It'll also be a digital-only release, which might disappoint some. But $50 for this game is a pretty good price point, and they adjusted that because this is going to be a similar length to the predecessor, so roughly like 8 hours to complete the game, which is more than the $70 Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 campaign experience, but it's not, say, like a 20-hour to 40-hour more fleshed-out AAA game experience. It's a shorter experience, one that's very, artsy.
And if people are happy about that, then that game will sell extremely well. But my assumption is that I don't think that the reduction in cost of the game will increase. Like, so let's say you go from $60 to $50. Well, that's like what, a 8.5% reduction? Will that create 8.5? Oh, sorry, actually, no, like double that. So like 16% reduction. Will that create 16% more customers? My assumption is no. I don't think so. I don't think that reducing the price of a game from $50 to $60 or from $60 to $70, or sorry, from $70 to $60, I don't think that it will increase the amount of customers based off of, proportional to the price reduction if you look at it percentage-wise. I just don't think so. I'd love to see the data on that, but I don't think that's the case.
Cinematic and all these things, but recognizing that people look at things in terms of value, they decided to put the price point a little lower than the $70 standard right now, which is, I think, a very admirable move. And I think there's room for different games to have different price points based on their offering, based on its quality.
And this is actually a really good point that Young brings up. And this takes us all the way back to, again, what I was talking about earlier with the Super Nintendo era. Is back in the Super Nintendo era, you had tons of dog shit games. So many of them. And the price point for those games was extremely low. And then the customer was able to decide, is this worth my $40? And then you also had these really good games like Super Mario RPG, like Chrono Trigger, like Secret of Mana. And these games were like $50, $60 even then in like 1995. But people would buy them because they were so good. So I think that really it's going to come to a point where games need to be priced. Uniform pricing of video games, like what happened in the GameCube era, really isn't sufficient. It's really not, because a game like Armored Core 6 has infinitely less content than a game like Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I loved Armored Core 6. I think it's a great game, but the amount of content that the game provides is so much less. So you should have a way to market and sell a game that's proportional to its value proposition. And that's what I think that a lot of developers are struggling with, because everybody is trying to hit the same uniform value proposition of $70 in the mind of the consumer. And that's why it's really great to see a game like Vampire Survivors that's $3. That's why I think also, conversely, you had so many people who were angry about a game like Prince of Persia that was $50. Because people perceive Metroidvania games as lower quality. It's all about perception.
Budget and the amount of hours that is on offer and how high in quality those hours are. But I predict that most publishers will just take advantage of a higher ceiling of base price points for games to just make more money, rather than to try to make their games better by reducing monetization elements now that game prices are able to maybe make up for some of the development costs or anything like that. It's just,
I think that you can never expect a bad development studio to make a good game. You might have some mistakes every once in a while, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think that you're really going to see that happen. Like, it doesn't matter how much. They can charge $1 million for the game and it's still going to be garbage. Think you're wrong here? Think about it this way instead. There will be more buyers, not because of the $10 discount, but because of the minus 20% discount. People will buy it because they got one more reason to buy it. Look, it's on sale. Well, you can't release something and have it be on sale. You would have to have it at $60 and then take it down to $50 for it to be on sale. In Brazil, for example, I did some research on this because people said that there were certain countries, no, you can. Actually, you can't. Pal World, yes. And I know that in the U.S., you can do almost anything you want. But in a lot of countries, and Brazil, I think, is one of them, where you're actually not allowed to release something and then market it as a sale price. There are a lot of other EU laws that are similar to that as well. Who cares about Brazil? Well, I think this is, I agree with that law. I think it's intentionally deceptive. You're literally, it's false advertising. You're saying something's on sale and it's not. Like, you're lying. Like, that's all there is to it. Pal World, I don't know how Pal World is marketed. I'm not sure about that.
Just an extra layer of monetization that they can excuse if that becomes normalized. Yeah. And so that's where my fears lie, and that's where I think games may very well start to become too expensive if freaking $100 becomes normalized for game releases and purchases. And there's also a case to be made about game development budgets becoming too inflated and games becoming too complex and complicated. And it's like there have to be efficiencies there that can help the budget so that we, the customers, don't have to suffer for it. Like going to what Capcom's president said here, considering the fact that wages are
this is the problem, is because they just keep trying to make these blockbuster video games. It's kind of exhausting in a way, right? Where like every game, like you pick something up and it says 1 of 500. It's like, oh, fuck. I gotta get all these now. Oh my god.
Raising in the industry as a whole, I think raising unit prices is a healthy option for business. That's putting the onus of good business on charging customers more rather than trying to find more efficiencies in spending money better in your business, the way you run things as a company. You know, maybe cut some CEO salaries for one, and maybe reduce the budget of games, and don't try to make something so high scale on a level that maybe you can't afford. And I know that's easier said than done. I don't know enough about the complexities of game development to tell you how to make spending budgets on games more efficient.
Sure, I can. Start using AI. Yeah.
But clearly things are becoming so overinflated that, you know, a lot of people are wondering, is this even sustainable? Don't we have to like dial things back a little bit and maybe look a little introspectively as an industry to gauge what is healthy for the industry? And, you know, that's on you as business, as corporations, as game
I don't think that the businesses are the ones that set the standard. I think the customers are. I think... So I want to create a couple of examples of how I think that's true. The first example is that businesses usually, like, the best businesses, right? Like somebody like Steve Jobs, true visionary, the Mac PC, the Mac 2, fucking insane. That's whenever people wanted something and the business wanted it at the same time, it's perfect. The iPhone was the exact same thing. The iPod was the exact same thing. Completely cleared the fucking competition. But think about all the failed attempts. We have Microsoft trying to release an iPad in 1998. We have Google Stadia. I think that we all know that at some point in the future, we're going to have cloud gaming, right? We know that cloud gaming will be the future. But nobody knows how that can happen. Nobody has perfected the idea yet, and the market really isn't ready for it. So I think Google Stadia wasn't. It was too early to market. And let me think. Is there a third example I can think of something that's too early to market? Fuck. BlackBerry VR. I think VR, and also, yeah, VR. Sure, VR. Definitely, I could give that. Stadia flopped so hard. Yeah, I know. Because of the quality. Metaverse. Yeah, I think Metaverse is something that will be successful and popular. And I can give you an example of why I think Metaverse will be extremely successful and popular. Roblox. Roblox is effectively a Metaverse. They've done it. The Dreamcast. You're right, the Dreamcast as well, sure. The Kinect. The Kinect. That was the Sony version of, what do you call it? Like a webcam thing, right? The Wii U. The Wii U, again. Was that Xbox? Oh, yeah, my bad. You know, you're right. And so, there are a lot of things that are early to market because really the market decides. Zune? No, you keep typing Zune. I think it's a bad example because the Zune is just a knockoff version of an iPod that Microsoft was trying to use to compete with Apple. It was never as good as the iPod. It was not even close. Like, my dad still uses an iPod that I had fucking 15 years ago. Like, that's it. Zune was a joke. My point is that the customer is the one that decides what the market wants. And I think that's why, you know, right now, a lot of people are wanting electric cars. You're seeing a lot of people looking for electric cars now. And because of that, you know, companies that might have wanted to invest into electric cars maybe 10 years ago, maybe they tried. Now they're doing it even more. The customer is the market. Yes, exactly. I don't think so. No, I think electric cars will be the future. I do think so.
Companies to look into that as well.
Actually, I could be wrong about that. I think that cars that are not powered by gasoline are the future. I don't think that, you know, like a gasoline-powered car is the future. Maybe not electric cars, but I think that's something that's powered separate.
Instead of having us pay by increasing unit prices and
They're
stuff.
powered by your hopes and
relying
dreams.
solely on that to make up for maybe potentially your failures on running a business more financially efficiently. But yeah, I don't know. I've just been seeing more and more companies trickle in with, plots to employ $100 priced AAA games.
Yeah.
And I'm contemplating, where that may or may not be justified, how long it might take.
Somebody also said, remember, keep in mind that, like, even whenever you do meet the market, like, Microsoft also failed with the Surface. Nobody gave a fuck about the Surface. Even though in some ways the Surface was a better product offering than the iPad. It's, again, why is that? It's because it's all about making what the consumer wants. And a lot of value is subjective. And that's something that somebody like Steve Jobs understood. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand now. Is how do you create subjective value, and what's the psychology between a value with a value proposition between, like, a buyer and a seller
to get there, and what that might mean for
service
the
to good
future
sales
of gaming. And
compared
I figured
to the
I'd just
iPod,
put this video out there to prepare you for that potential possibility that is not defined, but is definitely being discussed behind the scenes, and may happen in less years than anticipated or than you might think. And again, on some levels, already kind of happened with the different editions that can be $100 plus. But base price being $100, and then like deluxe editions and gold editions and whatever being even
Black
higher
Mamba
price
editions.
points. Like eventually, like that starts to become quite expensive, and I don't know how much.
I actually dislike that the least. If you want to fleece the mega whales into buying a $150 version of the game, I think that's great, because that keeps the prices low for everybody else who's not a dipshit. So yeah, I don't really care about collector's editions and stuff like that.
Can push on that front before people start to buy games less. Though again, something like GTA 6 comes along and people buy it no matter what. So who knows? Maybe companies will get away with it in a way that isn't justified, and that would be unfortunate. But I don't know. It's a lot of it is speculation right now. But just wanted to put forth the possibility for you to prepare in case this does become the inevitable future, maybe not so many years down the line. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this, and when you might find price point hikes for the base price of games acceptable, and what conditions publishers would have to meet for that to be acceptable versus those scenarios where maybe that isn't justified. I've shared my take. Share yours in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
I think that's a pretty fair breakdown of it. I do. I feel like he's been pretty fair about this. I mean, obviously, like, my perspective on this is very unpopular. And my take on this is very unpopular, because I talk about the inflation logistics and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people don't really care about that. They only care about the value proposition to them personally as a gamer. Personally, I would buy Elden Ring if it was $100. I would not buy... What's a shitty game? I would not buy Forspoken if it was $5. Like, I would buy Death Must Die if it was $30. I would buy Cyberpunk if it was $100. I would buy Blasphemous if it was more money. I don't know how much, really. Starfield? No, Starfield is like very... I don't know, really. Lords of the Fallen? Yeah, like, I kind of bought into the hype for that game. I thought it was going to be really good, right? So Detroit, yeah, it's just hard to say. Monster Hunter? No, I'd buy Monster Hunter for a lot of money, for sure. That was an incredible game. Do you think budget video games going down considerably because they outsource the work to people who do the same work for $8 to $12 an hour? Shouldn't price reflect that? Well, I feel like you don't really... Like, I mean, do we really believe that, though, right? Because, like, we have... So you're saying, should outsourcing offset the amount of money that something costs. Like, ask yourself the question, has that happened in any other circumstance? The answer really is no. Outsourcing does reduce costs, and it keeps cost at the same price for longer. But it's not like outsourcing something made it super cheaper. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think so. They outsource more to make profit and not to make it cheaper for consumers. Yeah. And also, I think it's about consumers. Because ultimately, this is what my perspective on this is. I think that gamers will accept $80 games if they are good games. I think gamers will accept $100 games if they are good games. And this is especially true with big normie games like 2K, like Elder Scrolls 6, like Grand Theft Auto. I think that they will accept it. I'm not saying that you will accept it. I'm not saying that. You don't have to say, not me. I'm not saying you. I'm saying that people as a collective will accept this. And because of that, the price overall will go up. The takeaway from this, in my perspective, is do due diligence. Don't buy a video game based off of hype. Watch the way that video games are played and make a decision based off of that, rather than just going and, oh yeah, I'm just going to try this game out for whatever reason, right? I'm going to buy this game. That's it.